Hello, and welcome back to Wellywood Wargaming. My name is Damon, and it's been a little while since I last did a video. So for those of you who do regularly watch the channel, I do apologise, but I have moved cities yet again. So for the second time this year, I've relocated my family and my life and everything to a new city that is now Sydney. I was in Melbourne, before that I was in Wellington, and now I'm in Sydney. And hopefully here to stay for a little while. Already really liking it here. It's a lot warmer, I must say, to Melbourne, but of course I miss all my folks back in Melbourne. And Wellington as well, for that matter. But anyway, without further ado, I thought we'd talk about the latest developments in Necromunda, which of course are rather huge, in fact, and that is that we have a new core rulebook that's been announced on the Warhammer community, and well, it's caused quite a stir, of course, because there are quite a few changes to it. So what I'm going to do today is just quickly go through some of, if not nearly all of, the actual changes in the core rulebook. Now, this is available for pre-order. I believe it actually sold out within a couple of minutes in Australia and New Zealand. I don't know about everywhere else, but I've seen quite a few people in the Necromunda community getting very upset and butthurt about there not being enough copies of this core rulebook, which kind of sucks, I suppose. I have not got my hands on a copy either because I don't get sent free stuff. I am not that popular yet. Hopefully one day though. Anyway, I'm here to give you my sort of unbridled opinion on everything. There are some really good changes in this rulebook. First of all, though, did we actually expect to have a new rulebook? Absolutely not. This kind of came out of nowhere, I'll be honest, especially with 10th edition 40k kicking off, among other things. But we're faced with a new core rulebook for Necromunda. It's massive. It looks like the biggest hardback book to date that I can think of that Games Workshop's actually done recently, but correct me if I'm wrong there. But huge amount of pages. Most of it, if you're a Necromunda player, you probably know already, but there are some minor tweaks and some major tweaks to the actual core mechanics and rules as well. And I'm actually going to start with some of my favourite ones and sort of work backwards, actually. Now, there have been a few people that have reviewed the book. This is not a review. This is more just a breakdown of my thoughts on it. So shout out to Sump Radio if you want to hear a bit of their thoughts on it as well. Go and check out their latest podcast with Chris and Steve. You can also check out the Goonhammer. Sorry, I can't even speak today. Goonhammer article as well, which is particularly good. So I've taken some information from what's out there on the internets and pretty much given you everything that I think is in the book. I'm hoping I haven't missed anything out here, but it's looking like I've got everything covered here. Anyway, let's get into it quickly. I'm going to start with my favourite addition to the current thing, and that is the fact that we've got lots of new campaign variants. Now, most of them are different versions of, the Dominion campaign, I suppose, which some of us know and love. Some of us just know and tolerate. But the Dominion campaign has been, I don't know, a bit of a problem for me. I don't particularly like the Dominion campaign, if I'm honest. There are lots and lots of different variants of that, though. Some include massive amounts of initial starting treasury for your gangs and stuff. But the most exciting one, and the one that I'm keen to talk about here, is the Classic campaign, which takes a lot of inspiration from the original Necromunda 1995 release of the game. Now, I fell in love with Necromunda back in 95 with my mates, and this is the campaign, or fairly close to the campaign, that we used to play in our little groups when I was at secondary school. And it was just fantastic. And I'm just going to give you a couple of ideas about some of the changes, some of the things they've brought back from N95 for this particular campaign variant. But there are some things omitted, there are some things that they've kept here, but here's just a sort of quick overview of it. Firstly, you can only ever access common items from the trading post, so anything that has common and isn't rare or illegal, you can access that at any time. So your sort of stub guns, your basic stuff, basically. Common stuff you can get on Gang Creation, and of course your unique house items and equipment that are actually on your house list as well. Of course, you can get those. But when you want to seek a rare item, it's quite different in that you still send your leaders and your champs post-battle to do it, except this time you're rolling to see what type of item you get. I believe back in N95 you used to roll a D3 first to see how many items that you get offered, and then you roll to see exactly what type, whether it's a weapon, whether it's some armor, whether it's a grenade, whatever. And then within that you roll to see which type it is. So if you did roll for a weapon, then you might roll then to see whether it's a basic, a pistol, a special weapon, and so on. I think this is really cool. It's just, it means that you can't pick and choose what you're going to get from the trading post. It's much harder to get stuff, and basically everything feels a lot rarer, which is something that I really, really liked back in the day. I thought it was excellent, you know. I modelled a Vansar leader with a power fist, and, you know, one day I finally got one, but it took, I don't know how many campaign games to randomly get a power fist, but I did in the end. But it's quite hard to do, as you can imagine. The other thing is nobody starts with armour, so flak and mesh have been moved to rare items. They're now rare 10 just for flak and mesh, which is pretty cool. So armour is harder to get to, and you might not like that, but I think it's pretty cool. The next thing as well is that your gang can never have more than 2 special or heavy weapons. I think this is a fantastic choice here. It means that there's no plasma gun spam. It means that there's no long rifle spam. You can only ever have a flamer and a heavy bolter, or you know, something like that. So you can't. You could have 2 heavy weapons, you could have 2 special weapons, or you could have 1 of each. And that really is it on that one, which I think is pretty cool. No hangers on or brutes. Personally, I don't have a problem with that either. I think if in fact, I'm going to be starting a new campaign in Sydney here, and I've got to say, I'm going to be using many of these ingredients, and I would say the hangers on and brutes thing I'm probably going to keep as well. The other one is no gang tactics. So I am a fan of tactics cards. I think they are a really fun part of the game, but they can also be problematic as well if you have certain somewhat broken cards in your decks, I suppose. So arbitrators need to keep a close eye on what tactics cards are getting used and which ones aren't. And I think just having maybe a random system where when you never get to choose the tactics cards that you're using is always quite good. But for this particular template, there are no gang tactics in there at all. It is Underhive only, so there are no vehicles in there either, which I quite like as well. Be honest, because I'm not that into the Ash Wastes vehicle rules and mechanics myself. It's okay, but I'd rather play in the Underhive. That's the setting that's taken my heart as a young boy. Now, every gang in the campaign starts with 3 territories. Those territories are randomised generally, but your arbitrator, again, maybe could hand-pick one for each gang, and then the others could be randomised. But you always start with 3 territories, and it's a bit different in terms of staking claims and stuff. There are no phases. There is no, no campaign cycles or downtime. Instead, this just carries on until you want it to end, I suppose, as an arbitrator. But really, really cool here. If you're fighting another gang and you take 3 times, If a gang takes at least 3 times as many fighters out of action as their enemy during a game, they seize one of the enemy's territories in the post-battle. So it's much harder to actually seize a territory. But when you do, but you can never go below your minimum of 1 territory. So even if you start with 3, you'll never have less than 1. So you'll always have some income. I'm not going to talk about the thing that isn't in there, but there is essentially a sort of upkeep thing in the old mechanic for N95, and that means that you've kind of got to pay food and shelter for your gang, which I would probably bring back and include in that as well. But as you can tell, I'm really excited about having that back. I'm surprised that they didn't include it earlier, to be honest, but I think they know just how much love all us old Munda N95 fans have got for that particular campaign, so I think there's going to be quite a few people using it from now on. Anyway, on to the next things, and these are all basically rules. So we're going to start with some of the rules breakdowns here. The first one, and quite a big one here, is that the rules around blast markers have been changed. So yeah, your grenades and your grenade launchers and whatnot are now much less likely to be able to be cheesy, I suppose. So no longer can your fast shot grenade launchers pinpoint a spot on the battlefield as accurately as they could before. It's now -2 to hit a random spot on the field of play. So it's much harder to actually aim, in that spot between 2 or 3 fighters and catch everybody in a blast now. You can still do it, but it's -1 to hit if you do that. But if you're shooting a target directly in the face with a frag grenade, then you don't suffer that -2. So it's quite good. I really like this change. Again, this is something that I've seen in a lot of in a lot of house rules anyway. -2 is pretty harsh. I've seen -1, but I think it's pretty great. And I must say that templates were problematic with some of those players who know how to use them properly, I must say. Having said that, of course, most people think, yeah, but what about corpse grinders? It's like, well, this doesn't affect flamers and web guns, so you can still do that. What it does do, though, is it kind of quite brutally nerfs grenades, hand-thrown grenades in the game, because it does mean that range that you've got on the grenades is even less likely to be able to be in range without getting that -2 modifier there as well. The next rule that we've got here is something that, again, is kind of common sense, really. In fact, most of these rules are common sense, and I'm surprised that they haven't done this before. And again, just reiterating that most people, including myself, have been including these sort of as house rules in their arbitration packs, so to speak, since the release of Necromunda, really. This next one is -1 to hit from standing up. So if you charge a fighter who is prone and that prone fighter stands up and gets to survive and make reaction attacks, they now get a -1 to hit just for standing up, which makes every bit of sense, because previously it was only a -1 to hit for turning to face, but not for standing up off the ground. You'd expect that to, of course, be a penalty as well. It now is, so that's good. But on the flip side of that, it's now -1 to hit if you're charging an enemy that you can't see or have line of sight to. This one I don't necessarily agree with. I think it's a bit of a weird one. But fair enough, I suppose. It makes sense from a thematic perspective, I suppose, but it doesn't really help close combat too much. I think a lot of these rules are kind of helping the shooting stuff, but not really helping the close combat stuff so much. So anyway, -1 to hit from charging if you don't have visibility of the fighter. That includes smoke grenades, of course, charging through smoke, charging around corners, etc. Fine, it's fine. The next one, and a massive one really, this is something that's actually going to change the entire game really, and certainly change the length of the games that you play, among other things. But this is that serious injuries now, so a bone snap on an injury dice, after the first, they now count as flesh wounds. So this is something that, again, kind of makes sense, and I'm actually surprised a lot of people haven't sort of thought of this earlier, but it really makes a lot of sense. Your multi-damage weapons are now, already they were very powerful, now they're extra powerful. Rapid fire suddenly becomes incredibly powerful as well. But your flesh wounds and your injury dice now stack. So previously, if you shot someone with a bolter and you rolled, say, four shot, let's say 3 shots, okay, or however many. You've got 4 damage dice that you're rolling, and you roll all serious injuries. Only one of those serious injuries previously applied to the fighter. Now they all stack. So the first serious injury counts as a serious injury, and the other 3 all counts as flesh wounds. If that's toughness 3 or 4 fighter, they're out of action in that shot. So you see what I mean? It makes for much more scary in general. It also means that recovery, flesh wounds are stacking, fighters are dying much quicker earlier on in the game, and rapid fire and high damage weapons are really much more dangerous and much more scary than before. However, there is more emphasis on assisting friendly fighters now. If you assist a friendly fighter, not only do they get an extra dice roll, but they also don't get the flesh wounds if you assist them as well. So there's more emphasis on trying to help your guys up. Pretty cool. The next thing is web. Web doesn't cause a flesh wound in the same way, so it still acts in the same way as it did before. So your web guns and web pistols are still very, very nasty indeed. They still do more or less the same thing. They cause a sort of instant serious injury, but they don't actually cause that flesh wound that you get with everything else now. So it takes the edge off a little bit, I suppose. They also do something different in terms of being captured as well, but we'll get into that in a little bit, I think. Exotic beasts have been sort of more refined, so your pets and exotic beasts have been slightly more streamlined. The rules were the way that things were worded, they were a little bit confusing, if I'm honest. Now your sort of break checks for your beasts are now similar. If your Phoenix cat gets shot and taken out of action, now they're kind of treated as a prospect with hot-headed. The hot-headed rule is kind of applying to beasts now, which makes a lot of sense. The owner doesn't have to take a bottle check if that happens. And it's a bit harder for them to to perform basic tasks like opening loot caskets and operating terminals and stuff, as it should be, because let's be honest, rats shouldn't be opening security doors. Or should they? I don't know. Probably not. The next thing, it's a bit of a weird one actually, is that weird powers. Again, this is a house rule that we had in our group, so I feel like Games Workshop has just copied it off us. Maybe, I don't know, but I know there's a few others that have been doing it too. But I want to claim that I started this one. Is that the maintain control is now a free action. So you still got to do the willpower check to maintain a weird power control focus. But it's now a free action. However, you can also do it as a basic action and you get +3 to the willpower check. So you still got that option to do it as a basic for +3 willpower, or you can do it as a free maintain control as well. So that's that. The shame of it is that all the weird powers are still in the Book of the Outcast, so you'll need to pick up the Book of the Outcast to own all those weird powers. In fact, you'll need to probably still own many of the other books on top of this book, but unfortunately the 6 original weird powers are in here, but none of the extra good ones are in there, so just worth mentioning that one. Vehicle rules are included here in the book as well, with some ever so slightly minor changes to prices of upgrades and things like that, but to be honest, it's not really worth talking about that just yet. The next thing though are some of the skills, Savant and muscle skills, not muscle skills, sorry, what's the other one? Brawn, have changed quite a bit. The Medicae skill has been changed sort of and brought in line with the whole flesh wound thing. So it's now a 3+ to heal a wound or a flesh wound on a friendly fighter within an inch. So it's quite different to how it was before. Overseer, which is a leadership skill, is now has been nerfed quite a bit. And again, this is something that we've been using in our groups. It now takes a leadership test to actually pull off the Overseer skill. So you can still do it, and your leaders have probably got very high leadership stats anyway. But it just makes it a bit more fairer, I suppose, a bit fairer for that Overseer skill, because you see some really ugly combinations of people using that far too easily. Just having the chance of failing it every now and then, I think, does take the edge off it a little bit, and doesn't make it an auto pick for every single cheesy gang that you get. The next thing are the brawn skills. The first one is Iron Jaw. That's been changed a little bit. It's +2 toughness against anything with no AP. Prior to this, it was plus toughness for any unarmed attacks, but of course nobody's generally walking around with just bare fists. You now get +2 toughness against anything with no AP, which again, it doesn't really make the skill good in any way. It's still a bad skill. You're still never really going to pick it. And there aren't that many close combat weapons with no AP. The only thing I can think of really is a servo claw. Everything else has pretty got -1, -2. It's a tricky one. But yeah, that's a minor change to Iron Jaw there. The next one is amazing though. This suddenly makes hurl really good, as you can now hurl on the charge again. If you go and watch some of my battle reports, we have included charging hurls in one of the scenarios that we were doing, and I think this is a really great addition. You can now get a free hurl action at the end of a charge instead of a fight. So you can run up to somebody and throw them off a gantry or something. Really, really cool. Very, very fluffy, very narrative, sort of rugby tackle vibes there. I quite like that one. And now Headbutt as well, a skill that's never really seen much use, is now a free action as well. So you can headbutt and fight, which is kind of cool. Bulging Biceps, unfortunately, is still hasn't been changed and hasn't been brought into line with the N95 version, which basically gave you a free suspensor. That was arguably a bit good, but, the brawn skills aren't good, and they're still not good, but it does make hurl definitely a better take there. But yeah, Bulging Biceps, unfortunately, is still trash, and you're still never going to take it. The next thing, and a really, really big thing along the lines of injury and whatnot, is that your lasting injuries table is now completely revised. You've now got a D66 here. Being captured is now a result on this list. So the capturing mechanics are slightly different. I think you've got a 1 in 18, I believe it was, chance that I saw here. Someone mentioned a 1 in 18 chance of being captured now, which I think is less than before. Yeah, and you've got some really fun results on the D66 lasting injuries table here. You've got multiple injuries, which is really nasty. So you can get 3 multiple injuries that stack. Pretty nasty, that one, but quite hard to get that one unless you're very unlucky. And you've got impressive and horrid scars and bitter enmity back as well. And these are things that were in N95 as well, that give you temporary berserk against the target that took you out and stuff. And there's, I think, impressive scars, horrid scars gives you +1 cool and fearsome or something. Pretty cool though. Definitely welcome return for those ones. Your medical escorts, you still perish on a 1. You still die on a 1, unfortunately, but it's much less harsh otherwise with the results. You don't just get a nasty injury. You're much more likely to actually come away feeling a bit better off for that one. But I won't go into the specifics of it too much. The next thing is the XP. Has been overhauled as well, or has just been made more generous, I suppose, which is a fantastic thing. I always felt that in the current form of the game, XP was almost too hard to come by at times, and credits were too easy to come by. So if there was a way of changing the amount of credits that you get in campaigns, but also bringing up the XP, I think it would just make the game more fun and more well-rounded. And they've kind of done that here, not with the money aspect, but with XP anyway. You now get 1 XP for causing a serious injury, which is fantastic. Really, really good. We actually did this in our last campaign here, or in Melbourne, actually. You now get 2 XP for causing an out of action, not just a leader or a champ, but pretty cool. That stacks with the leaders and champs, though, so you still do get that. And you get +1 XP for assisting a recovery as well, which I really, really like. That's really nice. 2 XP for wrecking a vehicle. And now your secondary skills, which have previously been pretty much unused because they were always random, you can now pick a secondary skill from your secondary choice of table for 12 XP. Now, that doesn't sound like a great deal because you can still get plus toughness or plus attacks or something else for a similar amount of XP, but it does mean that you're much more likely to do it now later on in the campaign, I reckon, just to give that unusual skill to a character in your gang. I think it's much better now. Having it always random didn't make any sense, and nobody ever took secondary skills. Now I think people will. I certainly will, just for fluffy reasons. And some of those secondary tables are really, really good and do benefit the player, the fighter in question pretty well. Your specialists are now slightly different as well, in that your gang, when your fighter becomes a specialist, they do gain a primary skill as well when they become one. So they don't just become a specialist and get kind of nothing out of it, which always felt a bit empty when you change into it. You're like, oh yeah, I'm a specialist, this is awesome, but you still have to wait until you level up again to actually take advantage of being a specialist, I suppose, in some ways. So you now get a primary skill when you level up, which is really, really good. But you're still a specialist. You still become a specialist on a double 1 or a double 6. The underdog mechanics are now basically like Blood Bowl, and again, something that I've been doing for quite a while is kind of treating it like inducements. So the amount of gang rating difference or crew rating difference, I think, is the better option. You get to make up with hangers-on and tactics cards and underdog cards and stuff as well. This is a good thing. It's definitely a good thing, but it's not always completely fair. I do think that there needs to be an element of being an underdog properly and actually not being quite as good as the gang that you're facing that should be better than you. It's kind of complicated, but I think you probably know what I mean. It's not always fair, because you can, if you're getting loads of inducements, if you've got half the rating that the opponent's got, and they're coming into a game against you, and you get to make it back up with custom stuff that you can pretty much hand pick and tailor to your opponent, you're probably the better gang as a result. So there is that. It's worth thinking about it. But I do think it's a good thing. There just needs to maybe be a cap on the amount of stuff that you actually get, or maybe random bounty hunters and scum, maybe giving them random loadouts would be a good thing, I think, just so that you can't tailor them to your opponent so well. Anyway, that's that one. There have been small changes to crew selection. There's now a hybrid thing, so instead of being random or custom, you've got hybrid, so you might have a certain amount of fighters that are random, you might have a certain amount of fighters that are custom as well, but other than that, pretty much the same. There are a couple of small changes to sentries and stuff. How they operate is still random, but it's the defender that rolls for them now as well. But again, you're not playing those scenarios that often. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I think I've pretty much covered everything there. I'm going to probably come back and do another video at some point, particularly with those campaign variants. I'd really like to explore the campaign variants and really figure out the next campaign that I'm going to run here in Sydney, and probably, you know, enlighten you and give you some ideas about how to combine some of these to make the ultimate campaign. But in the meantime, I think that's it. And again, apologies for not doing a video for a while. It's been a bit mad. Life has been a bit crazy, and I've really been trying to stay on top of things, but it's really difficult. So I do really appreciate your support and kind words, though. So please do continue to support me by liking, sharing, subscribing, and commenting as well. And check out the Patreon as well if you'd really like to support directly. That's it from me anyway. I know it was a bit of a hectic video and I'm talking a lot and very, very fast indeed, but this one's for all of you Necromunda wizards who know lots about the game. Anyway, that's it from me. Peace out.